Hello, good afternoon. So this has been my first chat about my first album, Great Distraction. Great timing, and there it is there as well. Um, yeah, it seems like quite a while back now. On one hand, and simultaneously on the other, it seems like it was only yesterday uh, that it all came about. Um, the reason for this kind of vlog, I suppose that's what it is because I didn't know if anyone was interested in some sort of background history to do with music, to do with why I got involved in doing this kind of thing, that kind of thing. So I thought, well, why not? Why not put something together and do a run through of each album as best I can. I've got no questions that have been asked. I've got no reason really to do this apart from just sharing some information, I suppose. The first album, yeah, I didn't even know it was going to be an album. I didn't even know I was going to make a track, let alone anything else. I think I was fooling around, or been fooling around. It was before 2015, to be honest. I think having the heart problem I did at the time moved things forward. But it's not like I didn't have synthesizers and access to music for many years. I bought my first small Yamaha synthesizer back in around 1984, 1985 actually. Still got it, still hiding just down there somewhere. Yeah, I'm a bit of a hoarder. I don't get rid of things. I tend to keep things, so everything I've ever bought is lurking around somewhere and will always be put to use. I really quite enjoy putting things together actually, seeing if this will work with that and so on and so on. I won't classify myself as a musician as such, but I do classify myself as someone who enjoys good music and likes listening to good music. And when you start getting involved yourself in producing music, you suddenly realise that you can do almost anything you like. And by description, hopefully this video will explain that as well. Kind of readdressing the fact that I didn't know I could make one track as an example, but when I did, and I saw the effect it had on someone, and they told me to go forward and try and make something else. The process of that thought in its own right was, well, can I? The very first track I made, put together, finished, was a track called The Tomb. It was the only, even to this day, it's the only track that I just, don't know, started and finished and never adapted, never changed from any process of that. It could probably be condensed when I listen and look back at that now. But it was quite interesting. It really was quite interesting. And especially the reaction of the individual that listened to that track and wanted to listen to it again and again, and he got this kind of thing every time he heard a particular part of the track, and he was well, so important to the whole of this process. I still believe he is, because this history, this movement with everything I've been doing would never have happened if it wasn't for this guy. I won't name him because I mean, I've named him in the past on blogs and things, but I won't name him just because of embarrassment. But I'm still to this day really pleased that his reaction was what it was, and how he sort of inspired me in his own right. So kind of coming back to what I was talking about, so I've gone and The Tomb is created. I'm just looking here actually to see if I can find the other track. Oh yeah, this is odd. This is also odd because I don't think I have an original mix of this particular track either anymore, which is odd because, as I just said, I don't get rid of things. But I can't find it. I can find a mix of it, but I'm not particularly struck on that particular mix, and it doesn't show up anywhere. The only place it shows up is when I occasionally put up a video which demonstrates that track, little comedy video when I was, for whatever reason, a little thought went in my head, and I thought I'd make a video for the Blackmagic advert, which they were asking for at the time. And oddly enough, I actually got through to the second stage, which was quite amazing. Anyway, that's a sidetrack, but that track was called Speedy Origami. But oddly enough, the 30 seconds, the minute or whatever I did for the video seemed to be about its entirety. Obviously, I thought, well, if I'm going to make another track for this supposed album, why not work on something I'm already started working on? But it just became apparent, certainly towards the end of the project, that sometimes you just do have to let certain tracks go, especially if it doesn't fit with anything. It hung around, it stuck around until the end of the project because it made the second track at that point. And it just stayed and it stayed, and when I was ready to release the album, it was a problem because you've reached a period you didn't even think you were going to get to, and then lo and behold, you just realise that you can't release this album with that track. It just doesn't sound right, it doesn't fit. So in actual fact, the album was almost ready to go, and I had to make another track. And that final track I made for that Great Distraction album was Immortal. And yeah, I'm glad I did, because I think it fit a lot better. And I don't know, really like that track actually. But still coming, and this is why I do, unfortunately, I'm a bit like Ronnie Corbett. I'll walk off and go in a tangent, but I will eventually come back to what I'm talking about. So yeah, the interesting concept really with the next couple of tracks, because I can't remember now, it's trouble with memory, if it was Lobotomy or God, but I do think it was the track Lobotomy that was my next track I worked on. This goes to show you about my dark sense of humour, morbid, the horror links, I don't know. But when it came to Lobotomy, I really sort of had this mindset of thinking what it would have been like in particular, I don't know if they were Victorian times, whenever they were, but that whole process of being in a room, being strapped to perhaps some sort of bed, and taken away, taken to theatre, and actually having a lobotomy. I mean, what the whole process would have involved and been like. And my idea of music, especially sort of being brought up or bringing myself up on a lot of Tangerine Dream music, which is definitely mind music, if you like, and conjures up images, I was just really curious to see if I could make a track that sounded like what I could see visually. And I thought that would be breaking my own boundaries if I could physically do that. So I just chose the track name, and then I thought, right, here we go. Let's see if we can conjure up a visual mental image via the music. It took quite a few days, but as it progressed and was coming about, I could really visualise this room, this man, the straps, the pushing on a trolley, the taken into a theatre, the drilling. And interestingly, even to this day, I'll listen to that. If I do listen to the track, I'll listen to it for a while. Realise that beyond the lobotomy section of that track, that tune that goes beyond is, initially it was always like it's hell, the pressure's been released, the lobotomy's done what it's done, but it's like it's not nice. But it's a really odd thing, because that track I've found, listening to it in different moods, can go two ways. It can go into that madness sense, or sometimes it can be kind of beautiful, where it's like everything's bliss now and all the madness is gone. So it's a very interesting track, but after creating that, then I suddenly realised that I had this sort of weird potential to make music that sounded like what it was saying it was. Now, I'm not a religious person, but growing up, my parents through different stages were religious or not religious, depending, you know, how their mindsets were also. Um, and whilst I was growing up, I was always told I could, well, I'm to believe what I want to believe. I was given that option rather than being indoctrinated or just blatantly poo-pooing something. I was given the option to digest information, to, you know, learn it at school and question things and so on and so on, which was rather interesting. But I always had this kind of vision as a youngster, what God looked like in my head. Probably like a lot of people, you know, it's what I'm looking like now almost, big beard and hair and whatnot. And I just wondered if I've done this Lobotomy track, is it really possible to pull off a song or a tune that could demonstrate what God would look like, you know, again through sound, but creating a sort of visual impression in the mind from the tune. So again, I embarked upon the same principle as I did with Lobotomy, and yes, lo and behold, as far as I was concerned, I sort of had this. I managed to create this I don't know, musical visual thing, and that's where it all really stemmed off. The process to start with actually started going a lot better and a lot quicker in some ways than I even expected as well. I wasn't getting tunes done in a day, that's for sure. It would always take 3, 4, 5 days, etc., to do a full track, and then I'd find I would tweak as time went by with different things and hearing and picking up different things. This whole album, actually, when I listen back to it now, knowing what I knew then and what I know now, it's still very raw. And there has been times where I've actually looked back and thought about reworking some of them tracks, because there are a couple of standout tracks for me I'm really impressed with myself, that to me are not as clinically, or hasn't been as clinically processed as I'd like, and why I do these days. And as I say, that all comes down to experience and knowledge. I wouldn't expect not to go back and try and attempt to do something, because as I say, I think there's 1, 2, 3 tracks there that really could be quite well redefined. And it's also interesting me doing this kind of little vlog thing now, based on the fact that I've just made this album Voices in the Head, or Voices in My Head, and sort of reflecting upon the fact that most of my music's instrumental, and the new one is releasing with vocals. But it is quite apparent, if we go back to The Great Distraction, there is some vocals going on in 1 or 2 of the tracks there as well, which was quite, you know, complimentary at the time. It was, as much as it sort of had a concept, it kind of didn't. It wasn't structured the way it was probably meant to be structured or thought about. But it's quite a versatile mixture of different tunes and different music going on now. I mean, I think things like Eclipse of the Mind, and Insect Paradise, Hyperville, certainly dancey type tunes, you know, pop type tracks, which I don't, to this day I still don't really know where they came from. But I will say that if I look, we'll ignore Immortal, because as I mentioned before, it was the last track that was done. But if we look at the first 6 tracks there, they were definitely the first 6 tracks in the grouping, minus the Speedy Origami I mentioned earlier, and they always stayed. But the moment I remember finishing Dark Love, and then I had problems. I really hit a wall. It was quite weird. I suddenly couldn't do anything. It was like, oh, I mean, whereas everything had been running quite smoothly and one track was done and another track would start, I really just, you know, it was a time right at that early stage where I thought, oh, this is easy. This is really easy, actually. I don't even know where I got that thought from, but I did. But I was kind of, you know, when I look back, I'm pleased I did hit a wall after Dark Love, because there's a part of me that thinks it should never have been easy. But, you know, as I say, I I can't explain what was going on in the early stages. It was probably just running away with ideas, learning things, excited by the whole process. Um, but then, getting what I considered to be about 3 tracks away from the end of an album, and then suddenly having no idea. I wouldn't say no inspiration, but I just couldn't find anything. So I realised that, and I do this often these days as well. You go away. You don't just keep trying to do something. You don't just sit there thinking, right, that's just something's going to happen. Because what you notice, when you're not in the right frame, when you're not in the right mood, you don't produce. You can't produce the best. You've got no ability. When things are right, when they're flowing, the right attitude and so on, you can go forward and do this. But no, I kept going to work, and this guy was saying, "You got any more tracks?" It's like, no, I've hit a wall. And then, this is odd because when you keep seeing me looking away, I'm looking up at the computer screen, which is identifying the tracks, and it was Brain Wrecked I worked on after Dark Love. I suddenly got a different feel or method to the way of producing the music I was going to do. But even to this day, and this is why it became track 11, Brain Wrecked was, as far as I was concerned, too clinical. I went down a different path, and it wasn't the path I'd been going down when I was producing the first tracks. It was more mechanical. It was more structured. I don't know, something. Again, it's a one-off because I didn't like the process. I don't mind the tune, and I know some people like the music and the video, but to me, it just didn't have the same feeling or the same capacity as a lot of the other music and the music I continue to do. I just didn't like that process. I mean, I'd imagine there's a lot of people who do, but I certainly didn't feel comfortable. It just didn't feel, creative or as creative. It just felt technical. But anyhow, it got done, and I realised it was a good tune in one sense, but just didn't have the empathy and the creativeness of other stuff I'd been previously doing. But I suppose I needed it to get over the hurdle and identify these different techniques and different ideas. And then suddenly hitting this point where, and I think again, I don't know which way round they were, but then Insect Paradise and Hyperville just suddenly, boom, just appeared. It came out. And I was well impressed with Insect Paradise. I mean, don't for this. I don't know where I got the title or the idea for the title, but I just felt something that said to me, you've got to do something about insects. And I didn't want to make a creepy, crawly video and stuff. I know I have over a period of time, but it's I just suddenly thought about this amalgamation of all different types of insects joining together and sort of having a big sort of rave or something of that ilk. What goes on in the head, I haven't got a clue. But I said I'd do this vlog and give you an inclination, an idea of what was behind the whole process, and I'm being honest and being genuine. That's exactly what was occurring. And I finally sort of finished. There was a few more, but I finished really on this Time to Reflect track. I finally managed to sort of somehow discover a tune I could somehow get closer to making something Tangerine Dreamish. It's not quite the same still. I don't think I'll ever be able to do that. But I also don't want to copy and be a direct. Someone who wants to just follow a certain strand and imitate. Like I don't think I ever want to do that. And I like my beats too much. That was my my little track towards that feel. And there was obviously a couple of remixes of a couple of tracks, and Nymphomation it ended up still staying. I think. I'm not sure even if it's on Bandcamp anymore. But it was a weaker tune. I was obviously running out of ideas towards the end of this process for sure. But that was it as well. That was the other thing. I thought, there's only one album in me. There is, not going to be anything else. This is it. It's great that I've managed to achieve that. I'll put it out there and see what people think, etc. I didn't think nothing. I just was happy I'd completed something, and I can make it available for people to listen to, and just see where it ended up and where it blossomed. Simple as that, really. So that is the history, really. The nuts and bolts of The Great Distraction. Oh yeah, apart from the title, but I think the title speaks for itself. I think I've always been, I think I've always thought the way I do, and how pertinent these days that we're living in these strange times. So yeah, that was the reason for the title, because I've sort of been keeping my eye on the ball, for most of my life, and I have to admit I don't have very similar viewpoints to some people. I try and contain that, but I'm acutely aware. I'd like to, make people aware of, there's maybe more than one thing, or more than one way of looking at things. Sometimes people have got agendas. They'll do what they do. Just don't think you should ever take your eye off the ball, really. And if you can't learn to find other ways of looking at things, because you're only confronted with things that you're being told, well, I don't know, just go away from that and clear your mind of what you've been told, and also just generally think. Simple as that. I've always thought people should think. This album wasn't telling people to think. This was just an album with the title. But yeah, it got me into the process of doing what I was doing, and have done simultaneously. And I've been enjoying that trip. So anyway, this is the end of the Great Distraction talk. My next one will be, I think the next one I'll do is Power Struggle, and we'll carry on from there. Cheers, thanks for tuning in, take care, bye bye.